Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Lowenthal, Product Management for Database Security. I'm joined today by Ashok Swaminathan, who is the Senior Director of Product Management for Auditing, as well as Audit Vault and Database Firewall. And today's topic is probably not one you're used to hearing from Oracle, but what we're going to be talking about is using Audit Vault and Database Firewall to go beyond the Oracle database to monitor some of the many other targets that are capable. Ashok is going to run us through how to set it up, and some of these are out of the box. They're just click and deploy, and in several of these what we're going to do is show you how to use the custom collector framework to go to targets that are not just easy out of the box targets. So really kind of a fun look at some of the capabilities of the product. Just a reminder that we do record these calls. I'll usually have the recording up on the Ask Tom website within a couple of days of the end of today. Takes me a while to get it all posted and everything. You can go there and view the back recordings all the way back to when we first started doing these. We do these Ask Tom sessions just to give you a direct line into database security product development. During the session, feel free to enter questions into the Q&A app that you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And you're not limited to just today's technical topic. You can really ask questions about anything related to database security, and Ashok and I will do our best to make sure you get an answer. We do 2 of these sessions the second Thursday of each month. The reason for that is it's a big world, and try to find a time that fits for everybody. And as always, we'll start with a couple of announcements, and then we'll move directly into the topic for today. It is October, which means a little bit later this month, on the 20th of October, you can expect to see the quarterly security critical patch updates. If you're not already subscribed to receive security alerts, you should go to oracle.com/security alerts. For DataSafe, we talked about this last month. The on-premises connector is still available in limited availability. That means if you want to try out DataSafe for your on-premises databases, you can do so until this program ends, still at no cost. So it's a great way to learn how DataSafe works and to try using it outside of the Oracle Cloud with some of your on-premises databases. Another announcement on DataSafe, we have expanded to all 20 of our commercial regions. There is no longer a requirement in some of the regions to do cross-region connectivity, which means we've reduced the latency between DataSafe and the databases you're monitoring. That gives you increased performance. It's also helpful for those of you that are in countries or regions where you have data residency requirements, because now we're able to ensure that your metadata about security is stored in the same region, the same data center as your databases. So if your databases meet residency requirements, DataSafe will also. Another announcement for this month is we released a brand new version of Oracle Key Vault. That was 18.5. This is available both through the normal eDelivery website if you just want to download it and install it. It's also on the Oracle Cloud Marketplace, so if you are an Oracle Cloud user, you can have a new Key Vault up and running within seconds. A lot of the focus for this release was on the RESTful Services APIs. We improved the distribution of the jar file for the APIs so that it's easier to pull down programmatically with wget or curl. Before, there were some hoops you had to jump through. We greatly simplified that. We also added in a couple of new calls to check things like server information, the version of Key Vault, just to make sure you're on the version you think you're on, and whether an object exists and what its status is before you try and retrieve it. We've made, over the last 2 versions, 18.4 and 18.5, several enhancements around secrets management in Key Vault. And in this new release, the administrator's guide has been enhanced to include a dedicated chapter just on secrets management. Do keep in mind that unlike many other vaults of this type, there is no charge per secret with Key Vault. That means that if you want someplace to store and retrieve secrets securely, you can do so without having to worry about paying a per secret cost. And I think we're the only vendor that does that. So kind of keep in mind that. Part of the improved secrets management was support for longer object names. Prior to 18.5, we were limited to 30 bytes for a name. We've increased that up to 120 bytes. There's that and a whole lot more, but if you're using Key Vault, urge you to move up to the new version and check out the new features for that. We're going to switch over now, and we're going to talk about Audit Vault and Database Firewall. And Angelin's going to take charge, and she's going to lead us through MongoDB, Postgres, Azure SQL, Managed Instance even, and ORDS. Angelin, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. So in this session, as Russ mentioned, we'll be talking about Oracle, beyond Oracle, and how to get this audited from the AVDF. So the agenda topics, broad highlights into what was new in AVDF 20, along with monitoring PostgreSQL and how you can monitor MongoDB and use some of our custom collector framework to monitor some of the new types like REST and JSON, followed by the resources and next steps. Now, a quick brief insight into the Oracle Audit Vault and Database Firewall product. As you all know, this is the database activity monitoring component of the database security portfolio. And it has two appliances. One is the Audit Vault server that picks the audit data from databases. It could be Oracle, non-Oracle. It could be from the operating systems, directory services, and it could be even custom, getting the audit data from application tables or other sources like XML, JSON, REST, and MongoDB. And then there's the network component, which taps into the network SQL traffic flowing into your database systems, and it captures that activity and it helps analyze the different SQL traffic that's flowing in. Now, what are the key features? In a holistic way, these are the key features that is exposed from the Oracle Audit Vault and Database Firewall, starting with auditing and audit collection that spans across the data access or data modification across Oracle, non-Oracle sources. It can capture before, after values. And in fact, in AVDF 20, we have gone ahead and integrated with Golden Gate. So you can capture these before, after values from using the Golden Gate redo log collection. And we do enable application auditing with custom collectors. And there is also a way where you can provision the audit policies from the console for your database target, specifically for Oracle database. And of course, the other key features around the network monitoring, where we have the multi-stage firewall with enhanced grammar analysis and which captures all these session attributes. So if you want to create policies based on your session attributes or based on the metadata that you have in the schema, so that is also available within these policy engines. And it helps SQL injection detection and prevention. The other key feature is around the reporting and alerting. We allow you to build alerts with customized conditions, so it would be more granular when any administrator gets notified of the alerts. And of course, we have the powerful customizable reporting feature where you can slice and dice the information to get what you really require. The other important feature around the AVDF is around the enterprise deployment. So we have integration with Active Directory or LDAP. We have automated archiving in place. That's introduced new in 20. And then there's a single unified console for managing audit collection and network monitoring. If you recollect in 12.2, AVDF 12.2, there were two consoles for managing audit collection, Audit Vault server and the firewall. Now it's in a single pane of glass. And we also provide the SIM and syslog integration. There is high availability available both for firewall and Audit Vault server. And the entire software is delivered as a software appliance. So it is kind of a hardened configuration. And the other big feature around the Audit Vault and Database Firewall is the support for the target types, which extends beyond Oracle, beyond the file systems and operating systems log, and it's quite extensible. And we also support hybrid cloud deployments. Now, coming into the feature list, which are quite new in 20 is the expanded audit collection, the built-in support for PostgreSQL, and we also have the custom collection support for JSON, REST, and Mongo. And as I mentioned just before, before after values, we use a golden gate for collecting from the Oracle database. And then there's a simplified database firewall. So all the policies that you build is quite simpler. You can create multiple SQL cluster set, which was not possible earlier. So you could train the firewall into accepting a known patterns, and you could create set and define your policies around that. And also we have support for rack databases, which is quite simpler to configure in the proxy configuration. We have also given the NIC bonding support for increased throughput, and we allow the SQL traffic collection on host monitor on Windows. And coming to the UI, it's an enhanced UI with rich dashboards where you can, at a single dashboard look, you can see what are the components, what are the health of my components. You can drill down from the dashboard to see the details as well. And it's a unified console, both from the target management and from the administration perspective. Then the improved enterprise support. We have rolled out support for the Active Directory integration, automated archiving, and multipath fiber channel support for the Audit Vault server. Now coming to the topic on audit collection and supported target in particular, this is a general concept of how you would structure the audit collection in Audit Vault. Like first you configure the targets, configure the trails, you deploy the agents, configure the trails, define the data retention policy per target. By default, it's 1 year. We generally recommend the customers to analyze their corporate requirement for how much time they want to keep their audit data online and how much time they want to keep it in the archive space, and then define the retention policy per target. Once you do that, the next step is configuring the audit policies that has to be done in the database. And that has to be quite granular to capture what really is required from the compliance perspective or from the security perspective. A typical audit policy would suggest like who is doing the action, what kind of action is done, when is it being done, where is it being done. So all these attributes are captured as part of the audit policy configurations. Once you have that, then when the audit collection starts happening on the target, you can define your report. You want to customize the report, or you want to slice and dice information based on your requirements. We have a wide, rich variety of reports to help you do all that. And you can also create your alert baseline to notify the administrators on specific actionable events. Now, this is a typical flow of what would happen in the Oracle database. Like you have the trails configured, which can pick up from the table or which can pick up from the directory, and of course, so even from the redo logs. And with the audit collection, it pulls up all these audit events, gathers it into the Audit Vault server, and makes it available in the console via the reports. Now, what is supported out of box from the Audit Vault server in 12.2? These are the various things which are available in out of box in 12.2, and these are the right side shows what is new in 20, which includes a PostgreSQL, the quick JSON, MongoDB support, before after value changes using the golden gate. Now coming to the extensible framework part of it, in 12.2 what was available was a database table collection, custom collection, the XML file collection. You don't have to write any piece of code, it's just a mapping that you have to do. And of course, we have the advanced format of using the Java-based custom collector. So that's for the advanced configurations. So this was available in 12.2, and it had enabled even the audit collection to happen from the application table, for instance. You could just have a custom table collector, map it to the application table, and pull in the audit records to the AVDF. Now, what's new in 20 is you can now configure, if your audit sources are in the REST or JSON format, you can configure the custom collection to pull in those audit records from them. And we also have a slight variant format of quick JSON, which we internally use for monitoring the MongoDB. And this format is also available for anyone who wants a quick and easier way for configuring from the JSON audit source. Now coming to the different configurations like PostgreSQL audit collection. PostgreSQL, we support versions in AVDF 20.1. We support versions from 9.6 to 11.3. And there are certain prerequisites we mandate for AVDF to collect from the Postgres. This is the out-of-box collector. So we mandate like that audit should be in the CSV format. Of course, PostgreSQL has a wide variety of format like syslog, they have Windows event log, but we support only CSV for collection into Audit Vault. And we also recommend a particular location in terms of the configurations. The other prerequisite is around having the PG audit extension. Now, this audit extension gives you the capability to capture a lot of relevant fields that are important, like your SQL statement, your object details, your timestamp, which otherwise it wouldn't come. Inherently, of course, the Postgres does allow you to log all the things, but unless you turn on the PG audit extension, these fields are not captured, and these are what is required by Audit Vault and Database Firewall. Now, there are links that are given in the presentations, like you can use those links to go through the details on what you need to configure at the Postgres end. Now, this is a sample audit data, like the sample SQL statement and the way the CSV file is generated with the audit record. Like this particular statement, if you see, like this audit record shows that this is for the object auditing with actions and on what it's on the table and the SQL statements along with the parameters. So all this granularity comes only with the PG audit. Else you would not see any of these informations in the log. Now coming to what you need to get started, first is configuring the PG audit extension. And the reason why we do this is because log statement, which is inherently available, it is turned on by default, will not capture that. So make sure you have configured the PG audit and make sure you have installed them. There is, if I can show you, all the links are provided there. So this is the GitHub location, which takes you through the configuration of PG audit and how you have to enable them and link it to the binary. So make sure that is done. And the other things that you might want to run on the Postgres configuration is to enable auditing. Now, Postgres actually has session level auditing and object level auditing, and they enable with these two parameters. Like pgaudit.log, it gives you at the session level. If I may show you. So these are the classes of statements which are logged at the session level. So based on your requirement, there might be need to enable at the session level for some of these classes. Also, if you want to do very granular auditing, that is with the PG audit rule. Now this parameter, so the way it behaves is like you audit for a particular role. This role, in fact, in Postgres is like a user login. So you basically audit all the activities of the user or the user role. And the activities that are audited is basically whatever grants or permissions that is given by the administrator to the user. For instance, in this example, the sales rep is the role that's created, and it's being granted all the select, insert, update, delete on the schema sales to the sales rep. So if we were to configure pgaudit.role equal to sales rep, it basically means all the activities on the sales schema by the sales rep would be audited. And this would capture everything, whatever the select queries or insert or update queries that's happening, it's initiated by the sales rep. So there are, so these two are the different levels of auditing that you might want to play with, and all these configurations are given in the link on how you can turn it on, and how if you want to have the parameters also, that is also available in the configuration file. So once you have the PG audit, the next is like, where do you actually log the audit data and how you want to log the audit data. That configuration comes via the PostgreSQL conf file, or if you want to do it at the database level or system level, you can run the alter system in their database. Now, this basically defines what we require from ABDF, and what's mandated is this location, the log destination CSV log, because we support this format, and obviously make sure that logging collector is on. But other parameters, you can take a look at it. There are like a lot of interesting parameters out there. Like you can fine tune it to say you want to log a particular statement if it is taking more time, not otherwise, or you want to vary the level of logging. All those parameters are also there, but it's up to you to configure them. For us, the mandated parameter are log destination and log collector. Now, with these two configurations in place, the next step is just to register the PostgreSQL target in the Audit Vault and Database Firewall console. The only thing that you would have to give is the secure target version in the collection attributes. And this version comes from the version that of PostgreSQL that you have configured in your environment. And configure the directory trail pointing to the location where all the CSV files are generated. And once that happens and your audit collection starts happening, you can see these reports for the particular target. Now, let me quickly show you the demo. Okay, so this is the PostgreSQL target. The adventure works. And as you see, the only audit collection attribute that is set is a secure target version. The audit trail points to where the CSV location is. You don't have to give the star.csv. As long as you point it to the directory, it should be fine. And once the collection happens, I've just created a saved report. So if you open that report, like all the attributes are captured. Now this object is also, because you have enabled the PG audit, you can go to the granularity of picking what object has those activities and what are the operations that happened on the object. So that's for the Postgres. Now coming over back to the next one, the MongoDB audit collection. Now, MongoDB is the document-based NoSQL database, and in ABDF, we support versions from 3.6 to 4.2. And there are some prerequisites. First is ensure the MongoDB supports auditing. Not all flavors of MongoDB support auditing, like the community version doesn't. So make sure that it supports auditing. And again, like MongoDB, similar to Postgres, generates log in different formats, like their default format. If you don't configure it, is BSON. It can also output in syslog and other formats too. In AVDF, we support in JSON file format. So make sure that format is set along with the destination file. And this comes in part of the configuration, which I'll show you later in a while. And you can also set the level of configuring auditing, like whether you want to do it at the session or you want to do it at the object, similar to what was done in Postgres. Now, this is a sample audit data. Now, if you see like this is like a JSON, single JSON document with multiple records in a single file. So it has a specific format, like if I can show you in a while, like this is the audit record format with A type, TS, local, roles, and all the audit records follows this format. And the quick JSON collector picks this format for mapping. Now, if you can see the mapping, like all the insert, updates, then even the deletes are mapped here. So this is how you would expect to see the audit records in the JSON document. And this is a mapping which we make use of. Now, coming to the configuration aspect of it. So one thing that we would need is a format that's a JSON, and path, the destination path where the JSON file will be stored. And this configuration is done at the MongoD. MongoD is a server platform where the DB instances run on it. So we have to do this configuration on the MongoD platform, but make sure when you start the server, it picks up the configuration file. And there are utilities in place to see, like this is one of the command to make sure that the right configuration is picked up at runtime. And you can refer to the configuration document here, I've given it here. The links are also provided on how you can configure the auditing and how you can ensure that the MongoDB picks up the right configurations. And also there are features like if you want to turn on specific object auditing, you can actually, I have not turned on in my sample, but you can do it. If you want to just tap and create collection. Create collection is your create table, create or drop tables. You can basically tap in only these audit events using the filters. And some of these are audited by default, like the system events are, you don't have to turn it on explicitly, and these are like audited by default. All these informations flow in. So the configurations, it's there in this link. Now from AVDF point of view, when you create a target for MongoDB, just pick the quick JSON format, and then you have to give all these collector attributes. Now the left portion of it is up there by default. The right side, the value, you have to fill in, and this follows the format of the audit record that I just showed you. Yep, all this mapping is there in our documentation. You can take a look. Now, once you have it there, it's same directory trail, point to the location where the JSON file gets generated. And when the trail comes up, you can get these records in the in our reports. So we capture, as I mentioned, there are system events which you don't have to do any filtering. It comes by default. And if you turn on the object level auditing, then we can capture, but all this are in the extension field. Your system audit events are mapped, and it is much straightforward. But if anywhere where anyone wants to use the object level, you have to tap into the extension field that shows up in our report. Let me show you the quick demo about it. So I have this. This is my MongoDB. And one more thing to note is MongoDB audit records has a time zone offset. So you don't have to set that collection attributes for MongoDB. Okay, this comes up. Let me also open up the reports. Okay, so this is the MongoDB, and if you see the collection attributes, of course, this host name is just an arbitrary value. You can just give arbitrary name there. But these are the collection attributes which you have to configure. And these mappings are in our documentation in our developer's guide. Make sure that the time zone offset, if it is there, just delete that. Okay, and the audit tree, again, is the directory audit tree. Now going to the reports.
Can you still hear me, or is there some?
There's some background noise that I can't tell where it's coming from, but we can still hear you.
Okay.
Is it better, Russ?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Russ. So this is a system event report where all the core fields, as you may call it, has all the data that's from the system audit events of MongoDB. Now let's look at the other report, where you want to get the granularity of the object level. So if you see, this is the extension column that we have pulled in. So all your object level auditing goes into the extension column. So if you happen to see these audit records and you want to finally make it more granular to see what objects are touched on, like this is the way that you would have to configure to see those activities on the objects. Okay, so that's about the Mongo, and let me go back. Okay, so the next is the custom JSON. So what we had covered is the Postgres using out-of-box out-of-box collector, and the MongoDB using the quick JSON custom collector. Now, quick JSON is a way where you don't want any kind of a transformation within the mapper, like you don't want value transformations or you don't want any field transformations, and those fields are quite similar to what you see in the MongoDB. You can basically use a quick JSON to collect from similar sources, not just Mongo. You can use it for other sources. But if you have like advanced JSON audit data where you need to have those transformations or you need to have all those complex mappings in place, then you can go for the JSON custom collector. Now, the JSON custom collector, again, like, the JSON document, and we do support in different formats. Like you can have JSON array where you have the JSON documents in multiple lines. But the format that we don't support is if the JSON, if a single JSON audit record goes into multiple lines, that is a format we don't support. Else we support all the other formats. Now, this is one of the sample audit record from the Azure SQL MI instance. And if you see, there's an array of JSON documents in a single file, which is one of the most complex JSON document that probably you would typically get to see. And now what needs to happen, like once you have this JSON document, there is a series of steps that you need to follow to configure the custom collector. First, you create a collection plugin, deploy the plugin into Audit Vault server, deploy the new agent if you don't have it on the server, or just restart the server to, restart the Audit Vault agent to pick up the new plugin that you have deployed on the Audit Vault server. Then configure the trails using the agent deploy. Let's go into one by one. Like this is a detailed step. So first is creating the plugin manifest file. The manifest file is like the central piece of the custom collection, which defines the various files that you have in the folder, defines the plugin ID, plugin name, the version. There's so much of information in the plugin manifest file. Then you create the custom JSON mapper XML, which basically gives you the ability to map the fields that are in the target to the Audit Vault AVSys schema, AVSys event log schema to be precise. And then ensure that these are in the directory structure that we recommend. And then you package this using the SDK. We do provide that AV pack in the Java, the SDK that is there. You can download from the Audit Vault server console, create the plugin zip, and then you deploy it. You can either deploy it from the UI or you can deploy it from the AVCLI. And then once it's available on the server, you can download it to the agent just by restarting the agent. It upgrades the new version or the new plugin that's available on the Audit Vault server, and there you are ready to go. Let's just go one by one through all of these steps. Now, the sample is based on the Azure SQL MI JSON that we have got. So the manifest file looks something like this. So you have the name for the plugin, you have the ID for the plugin, and then there is the mapper file which defines all the mappings. And something to note is a trail type and the class that corresponds to this. Now notice this is a multi-JSON file collector factory. So based on your collection, actually this factory varies. Like for REST, it varies. If it is a single JSON document containing multiple record, it varies. So for database collector, it varies. So it's there in our documentation. You can refer to what is required for the particular audit source. Now, once you have this, the next step is to go to the mapping file where you will define the secure target type. Now this information, this piece of information, it should be, and it must be the same what you have entered in the secure target type field in your manifest. And then you give the versions, minimum and the maximum. Minimum is optional, maximum is required. And this is basically required because you can have multiple mapper files based on the versions. So the version is what you would typically give in the audit collection attribute when you register the target. So based on the version there, you can pick up any of the appropriate mapper files. And post that, you would configure something like core fields, large fields, extension fields, and marker fields. Now, core fields are those fields which are quite critical for calling that as an audit event in the first place. And these show up in our reports. Now, what constitutes the core fields is something that you would get in our documentation. I don't know how many of you have looked into our developer's guide. There is an entire appendix on what constitutes the core fields and what is mandated among the core fields. There are few fields which are required, like your event time UTC, your command class, username, and not everything is required. It's up to you to map. And then there is large field. Large field is a CLOB column, like command text or command parent. Marker field is basically something that uniquely identifies the audit record, and typically we have seen customers using their session ID, their event timestamp to define their marker field. An extension is anything and everything that you want to put it as a key value pair that will come up in our reports. So you define those mappings within the mapper field, like within this field mapping info tag. And this is one such sample where you would see the JSON path, pulling up the record from the audit source and mapping to the event time UTC. And something interesting to note is like you can do value transformation and field transformation within the mapping file. Now, value transformation basically means like if you have a JSON path which points to, say, this A type is having a value of drop collection in the audit source, your command class field in the Audit Vault server should have a value of drop. So you want to transform the value that is available on the target to something else on the Audit Vault server. That's where you will use a value transformation. Field transformation is where you want to define if for example, my A type is drop collection, you want to pick the target object, which is a field in the Audit Vault server, to pick up the value from this JSON source. So such field transformations are also possible within the mapper file. Let me quickly show you what we have for the Azure. So this is the Azure manifest and the mapper file, and within the structure we have this mapper, and we have used the multi-JSON collector factory, defining the trail as directory. And we have defined this target type as Azure SQL managed instance. Now coming to the mapper, so we have tons of information here, like this is the same target type, and you might want to define these. If it is a single record, both would be the same. Otherwise, if it is an array, you might want to give the array start element and the record start element over here. And these are the different core fields that we have mapped to with the transformations, and large fields and marker field, for example. This is the event ID has been mapped. Okay, and going back. So once you have all those defined with the proper directory structure, and if I may show you the directory structure, so this is the directory structure of that plugin where you have all these paths, and within the templates you have defined the mapper file, and and this is a manifest file. Now with this in place, you can package this with the AV pack SDK, and you can deploy this to the AVDF server using either the UI or with the AVCLI. And once that is done, you can uh, you can ensure that it is successfully deployed using the plugin deployment plugin menu, which is available in the administrator console. Make sure that the version that you are deploying uh, reflects the correct one that you have in the file. And once that's done, when you restart the agent, ideally the latest what is there on the server, it should come to the agent. So this is how you ensure that it is all in good shape for you to start configuring the target and the trails. So once this is there, we create the target, and for Azure, the time zone offset and secure target version, time zone offset is required only if the JSON data doesn't contain the offset, not otherwise. For instance, if I were to use the same custom collected JSON for audit, so for MongoDB audit source, I wouldn't require this time zone offset. So once you have it there, then the other thing is the directory audit trail. So let me show you from the UI, and this is the report. Let me just quickly show you from the UI. So this is the MI instance. So the target type is what you have defined in the custom collector plugin. And if you see here, time zone offset and secure target version is set, and we have configured the audit trail location. And if you go to the event report, so this is all the mapping that we have done as part of the mapper field, where we have brought in all the command text, your event, target type, and of course, whatever field we found interesting within the audit source. Like I have the one, this is the JSON document, which has the complete configuration. So it had all the SQL statement, the statement that was executed with all the user information. So we got everything into this format, whatever is the other fields which we found interesting. So that's about the custom JSON. We go back. Okay, and okay, now coming to the next one is a REST audit collection. This again is introduced new in AVDF 20. So if there is a REST source which emits these audit record in the JSON path, you could leverage this custom collector for gathering these information in Audit Vault server. Now this is a sample ORDS audit data in JSON format, which we got it configured internally. And the ORDS audit format actually outputs in the JSON format. With it's a single JSON with an array of JSON documents. Now the manifest file looks something like this. Something which you need to make note of is the trail type, which has to be set to REST, and the collector factory, which is JSON REST collector factory. The rest of the configuration remains the same in the manifest file and in the mapper file. Now there are a few things that you have to provide for the REST URL. One is the resource name, and this points to the the service, the audit service that is exposed in the REST. And I will come back to it in a moment, how you can get this URL from the REST complete URL format. And these are the service details that you would have to enter. Basically the authentication that is required for the REST, and we support only basic authentication for the time being. So you have to enter, when configuring the target, you have to enter the username, password, if the REST mandates you to enter the authentication. And these are the service detail, the start time and the end time of the audit record, which again you will get from the REST URL, and the pagination tag details, which is configurable within the REST service. REST, everything is follows the typical custom JSON collector format. So once you create these configurations, package them and deploy them to the Audit Vault server, all those remains the same. Now coming to how you can get the different details from the REST URL, like if you notice the coloring difference, the first is the REST URL, so which you would give at the time of registering the target. So your target connection information is your base REST URL. And when you configure the audit trail and within the mapper file, the service detail, the audit service information is which is represented in green shade here. That is the information which you would give in the audit trail as well as in the mapper file. And your start time and end time, it basically picks up from what is configured in the URL. Once that's there, then you create an audit trail for the REST trail type, and you give in the details for the particular audit source. And of course, you get all these events in once the trail collection starts happening, you get these events in the Audit Vault server. Let me quickly show you from the UI. So this is the target. And let me also show you, so this is the ORDS JSON REST URL, where you can see all these JSON documents in different, in an array. And this is a URL that we have configured as a target. Now, the target connection it points to the REST service, the base URL. And in your collection attributes, again, like, your time zone offset, and if it is not there in the audit record, and the version is mandatory. Now, once you get there, this URL is what you would typically have from here, which points to the audit service, which is exposed in the REST URL. And once you have there, let's go to the reports. So this is the event report after the events are tapped into the ABDF. So all the information, whatever you require for analysis, it comes into the ABDF. So that's about for REST. And okay. So to summarize, we have seen like how you can use the Audit Vault database Firewall to get the audit data from PostgreSQL, which is from one of our out-of-box collectors, and use a custom collector framework to monitor MongoDB, or whether it is from a custom JSON file, or whether it is from a REST URL, which spits these audit records in the JSON format. So you've seen all these things. And of course, like, in 12.2, we already had the database custom collection plugin and the XML custom collector, where you can tap into any application audit data, which is in the custom table, or you can anything on the XML audit source as well. Now, if there are complex configurations, like you can leverage even the Java-based custom collector to write your own piece of code to pull in all the audit data and map it accordingly. So in a typical scenario, like most of the targets, even though we don't provide out-of-box collectors, should be configurable using the custom collectors. And we would be happy to work with you as you see customer requests from the field for configuring newer targets, newer type of targets, which we don't have out-of-box collector for. So that's one thing. The other thing that you might want to take note of is AVDF 12.2 is reaching premier support end date by March 2021. So it is, if you have customers reaching out to you, make sure that they are on the upgrade path to AVDF 20, or if they're doing a new installation, it should be on AVDF 20. And if you have customers or prospects who are doing the implementation, who are planning to do the implementation, you can reach out to this mailing group and you can have them drop a mail. One of us, Russ, myself, and Ashok will pick the lead, and we will follow and help them integrate in a seamless way. And of course, there are other references which you can take a note of, where we have blogs, we have technical resources, we have cookbooks, we have so many resources out there to help you configure and the AVDF in a very smooth fashion. Okay, so that's it from my side.
And I want to thank everybody for attending today. Next month, second Thursday, is on the 12th of November. And right now, planning on using the time to talk about database password policies.